On a quiet suburban afternoon, sunlight poured over a small neighborhood street. The air was thick with summer heat, heavy enough to slow the world down, yet one sight breathed life into it. At the corner, a bright cardboard sign stood in the grass, its edges curling from the sun, lemonade, 50 cents. Next to it, a folding table, a pitcher glistening with condensation, and a little black girl with pigtails and hope in her eyes. She was only 9, but she sat tall, her smile wide, her heart eager. For her, this wasn't just about selling a sugary drink. This stand was her pride, her dream, her chance to prove something. She had seen other kids do it. She wanted to show her parents that she, too, could start something of her own. But not everyone saw it that way. From a distance came a sound that changed the atmosphere completely, the low, rolling thunder of motorcycle engines. One bike at first, then another, then several more. Their roar echoed through the houses, rattling windows, drowning out the innocent chatter of birds. The little girl stiffened, her eyes darting up. A group of bikers was turning onto her street. Big men in leather jackets, their arms inked, their boots heavy against the asphalt. They weren't smiling. They weren't waving. They slowed as they approached the lemonade stand. Neighbors peeked out from windows, some pulling back curtains with worried eyes. Mothers called children inside. The street fell silent, the tension almost suffocating. The girl's small hands trembled as she clutched a paper cup. She had worked all morning squeezing lemons, stirring sugar, arranging her table neatly. Now, it all felt fragile. What could a gang of bikers possibly want at a child's lemonade stand? Were they here to laugh, to intimidate, or worse? Nobody could have predicted what happened next. Her name was Amara. Born to hard-working parents, she carried the quiet resilience of a family that had always known struggle. Her father worked long shifts at the factory on the edge of town. Her mother cleaned houses in the wealthier part of the city. Together, they stretched every dollar, sacrificing so that Amara could have a better childhood than they had known. The lemonade stand was more than a hobby. It was her idea of independence. She had begged her parents to let her set it up, promising she would handle it all on her own. They had smiled at her determination and gave her the few dollars needed for sugar, lemons, and cups. But behind her joy, the neighborhood wasn't always welcoming. Amara's family was one of the few black families on the block. Most of the neighbors were polite on the surface, yet subtle signs of rejection were always there. Conversations would stop when her parents walked by. Invitations to neighborhood events never seemed to reach their door. Sometimes when she rode her bike, kids ignored her or whispered cruel words behind her back. Amara didn't always understand it, but she felt it. Still, she believed in the goodness of people. She believed if she worked hard and greeted everyone with a smile, things would change. On that summer day, she woke up early, full of excitement. She carefully made her lemonade, decorated her stand with markers and stickers, and sat proudly under the blazing sun. Some neighbors passed by, offering her quick glances but not stopping. A few dropped coins and bought a cup. She counted every coin as a victory. But as the hours passed, sales slowed. People avoided her gaze, as though buying lemonade from her wasn't the same as buying from the other kids on different blocks. And then came the sound. The motorcycles. The growl of their engines was intimidating enough to make even adults uneasy. To a 9-year-old girl, it was terrifying. The bikers turned the corner and rolled down the street in formation. Jackets patched with insignias, sunglasses covering unreadable eyes. They stopped right in front of her stand. The world seemed to freeze. Amara's throat went dry. She wanted to be brave, to sit tall, but her little hands betrayed her with trembling. The bikers parked their motorcycles, the kickstands slamming onto the pavement with sharp metallic clicks. One by one, they dismounted. Boots heavy, chains rattling, leather creaking. Their presence was overwhelming. The leader, a tall man with gray in his beard, stepped forward. His expression was unreadable. He glanced at the table, at the sign, then at Amara. Behind him, the other bikers formed a line, their shadows falling over her stand. Amara's heart pounded. She thought about running inside. She thought about calling for her mom. But her legs felt glued to the chair. She remembered her father's words from the night before, asterisk, no matter who you meet, stand proud, my little one. You have every right to be here. Asterisk. So she sat. The leader reached into his pocket. Neighbors across the street watched, tension thick enough to choke on. A few whispered. Some clutched their phones, ready to dial the police. And then it happened. The man placed a large bill on the table. A 20. His voice rumbled low as he said, 1 cup. Amara froze. She hadn't expected kindness. She hadn't expected anything. Slowly, she poured the lemonade, her hands still shaking. The man accepted the cup, took a sip, and nodded. Then the rest of the bikers stepped forward. One after another, they dropped bills onto her table. 10s, 20s, 50s. Some didn't even take a cup. They just handed her money, smiles breaking across their once intimidating faces. Amara's eyes widened. Her tiny jar of coins was suddenly overflowing. The bills piled high, more money than she had ever seen. The neighborhood stared in disbelief. What they had assumed would be a scene of intimidation turned into something else entirely. But it wasn't just about lemonade. The bikers gathered around Amara's stand, shielding her from the weight of judgment that so often pressed down on her. They laughed loudly, praised her determination, and encouraged her to keep going. Their presence was both protection and defiance. For the first time, Amara didn't feel small. She felt seen. Yet the moment also revealed something darker. Some neighbors frowned, arms crossed tightly. Whispers of disapproval spread. Why were these men supporting her? Why were they giving her more attention than the other kids on the block? Prejudice rarely announces itself openly. It lurks in silent stares, in the curl of lips, in the way people shift uncomfortably when kindness crosses racial lines. And Amara felt it. She could feel the weight of their eyes. The bikers didn't care. They kept piling money onto her table until it was clear that Amara's stand was no ordinary one anymore. It had become a symbol, a quiet rebellion against the unspoken rules of who belonged and who didn't. The tension reached its peak when a man from the neighborhood finally stepped out of his yard. He had been watching, his arms crossed, his face sour. He approached the stand with a forced smile, addressing the bikers as though their presence offended him. He questioned their motives. He questioned why they were giving so much to this stand when other kids were selling lemonade too. His words dripped with the poison of prejudice, thinly veiled but unmistakable. The bikers stood silent at first. Then the leader took a step closer, his shadow falling over the man. His voice, calm but firm, cut through the tension. He spoke not with anger but with authority. He reminded the man that children deserve encouragement, not comparison, and that community means lifting up the smallest among us. The man backed away, muttering, his pride wounded. Neighbors retreated into their homes, curtains snapping shut. For Amara, it was the climax of fear and courage colliding. She had expected rejection, maybe even cruelty. Instead, she witnessed strangers standing for her when others wouldn't. And in that moment, the lemonade stand was no longer just a stand. It was a battlefield of perception, a challenge to the quiet racism that had always lingered in the air. The bikers stayed with Amara until her pitcher was empty. By the time they left, her little table was overflowing with bills, her heart full in ways no money could measure. Word spread quickly through the community. Some tried to dismiss it as a fluke, others criticized it quietly, but many were forced to reflect. They had seen courage in unexpected places. They had seen strangers step up where neighbors had failed. Amara's parents returned home that evening to find her glowing with pride, her table heavy with blessings. They listened as she recounted every moment, her voice trembling with excitement. They hugged her tightly, tears in their eyes, knowing this day would be etched into her forever. For Amara, the lemonade stand became more than a childhood memory. It became the first time she saw proof that allies could exist in unexpected forms, that strength could look different than she imagined, and that her small voice mattered. Years later, She would look back at that day not as the day bikers came to her stand, but as the day the world showed her both its ugliness and its beauty at once. And for those who witnessed it, the question would linger long after the engines faded down the road. When a child simply seeks to be seen, how many of us stop, how many of us turn away, and how many of us dare to stand beside her?